Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit HRgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. Hello, listeners. This is your host today, Bill Banham. And joining me on the show today is none other than David Perring, Chief Insights Officer over at the Fosway Group. David has been an HR pro for over 30 years, and over that time, he has always been at the forefront of innovation and has retained a strong sense of optimism, energy, and passion for transforming organizational learning and performance. As Chief Insights Officer for Fosway Group, he independently explores the experiences of practitioners and suppliers to understand the realities of what's happening in corporate learning, talent development, and HR. David, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show today.
Thanks very much, Bruce. Very kind of you to invite me on. Really appreciate it.
So beyond my reintroduction there, David, why don't you start by taking a couple of minutes and introducing yourself, telling our listeners all about you and what you get up to?
Yeah, so I think I have one of the luckiest jobs in the world because I get to talk to HR professionals about what's really working with what they're doing in HR for their people, be that across any step of the employee life cycle, from recruitment to performance to learning and succession and employee listening, across the whole gamut and offboarding, all those sorts of things. So really, I get just to hear what's working around their systems, what's not. We get to do surveys with them. And it's a very privileged position because you get to hear the sort of warts and all stories. And I feel very lucky because it enables me then to try and help distill for everybody else. And this is what we do, maybe some of our advisory work, is try and help people navigate in their context all the complexity of policy and strategy and solution choices that maybe bring things to life in terms of people's day-to-day work, just for their work as their employees. And that's what I think I really get involved in. That really gives me a buzz. It's just being surrounded by people who are a lot smarter than you. It's a great joy.
Well, I don't know about a lot smarter than you, but there definitely won't be a lot better looking than you, David. It's good to have such a handsome devil on the show today. What a shame, listeners, it's audio only. You're missing out.
I'm sure that's a blessing for everybody concerned.
So, David, Fosway have been surveying the HR community for a long time, for about the last decade or so. What are the key trends you've been seeing over that time, and what's the long view of where HR is at today?
Yeah, I think one way to think about the long view is, to some extent, what are people doing with their money? And I think the sort of the long-term view maybe isn't any surprise really, in that actually people are spending a lot of money on HR tech. And actually that whole sense of investing in HR technology is incredibly resilient. If you go back to the first time we did the survey in 2015, all the way through to last year, we're actually running on this year's very imminently soon. The one thing that has been consistent is people typically saying, or 70 to 75% of people saying typically, that they're going to increase their spend on HR tech. And that is just been part of the reality, the sense of actually you cannot be a highly functioning HR team without good tech surrounding you. That does cause other problems in other places, but ultimately that's one of the key trends. The other thing is just in terms of HR headcount. Pretty much until COVID, on balance, when you ask people, are you increasing or decreasing your headcount in HR? Up until COVID, pretty much the trend was we are decreasing our headcount, and then that headcount went for a really big dip over the COVID pandemic. And then we saw immediately after COVID and things loosening up, people almost overcompensating, recruiting again, trying to build their way back to maybe the teams they had before the pandemic. And what we're seeing now is this sense of actually maybe the headwinds are starting to bite, and the uncertainty about the impact of AI in the future has started to sort of change the trajectory of that graph from being actually, yeah, we're still looking to grow, but that the people who are looking to decrease their headcount is starting to reach those sort of numbers that we saw pre-pandemic. So I think the sense of, if you thought your career was safe in HR, if you're a good HR practitioner, probably yes, but the trend is not necessarily to grow HR headcount in the future, and I can't see it expanding either. The other thing that we see is just HR investing in their own expertise. The world of work is changing so fast. It is so dynamic that trying to keep ahead or keeping on top of the critical trends, what that means in terms of employee experience, is really growing fast. But equally, as I said earlier on, the sense of satisfaction around HR systems is pretty low. Only 33% that their solutions are fit for modern workforce. And so there's still a lot of work to be done, and people are looking at the employee experience. That's, again, one of the key trends over the last 5 years in particular, as being something that people are really focusing on as an HR team, be that learning, talent, ability, analytics. Those are the three highlights for investment pretty consistently over the last 4 or 5 years. And that probably takes us to that sense of, yeah, the long-term trends, tech, employee experience, tech, and growing my expertise.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could focus on right now, then, David, what is your research in corporate, all the corporate conversations that you're having all the time? What are they telling you? What's going on?
Okay, the thing that stands out, and maybe this feels like a bit of group thing, but it feels as though it's a really significant wave, is the focus on skills availability, talent availability. We hear from our respondents to our survey that it is the number one business challenge, and that beats profitability, customer success, and workforce agility as being the top drive. It is the number one thing that HR pick out. And what that sort of translates into is 94% of organizations saying that they aren't able to get the talent that they need. And one of the reasons, and maybe one of the catalysts around that, is that only 69% say they have significant skills gaps. So there's a dearth of skills in an environment which is highly volatile, highly changing. The pace of innovation is incredibly fast, and the skills comes out pretty much, or being a skills powered organization comes up as being probably the top theme across everything that we speak to organizations about. And I'm not sure if that's just the weight has been balanced in terms of recent conversations because of attendances at a few conferences, but that seems to be where things are. And the other side of that is AI. Everyone is exploring, everyone is starting. A handful, less than 10%, think that they're advanced in using AI to raise their game around their organization. That's where people are really focusing, but very few have made a great deal of progress with AI. It's an emerging force that is going to be incredibly disruptive for us all. But those are where probably the top conversations are.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HRchat podcast. If you enjoy the audio content we produce, you'll love our articles on the HR Gazette. Learn more at HRgazette.com. And now, back to the show.
See, this is why we got David on the show. Listeners, he knows his stuff. David, how well are HR systems landscape solving the problems of people success and employee engagement then? How close are we to having solutions that are fit for modern times?
Yeah, there's still a lot of legacy solutions out there, and I think that creates a drag in the industry within what people are able to do. Expectations take a while to deliver because of that sort of legacy install base. And as I said, 33%, right? It's a third of organizations think their solutions are fit for the modern workforce. Actually, that means to some extent that everybody else doesn't think it's fit. Otherwise, they'd just be positive and say, yeah, this really works for us. The trend over the last 5 years is for the gap between those who are deeply dissatisfied, who maybe sit on the fence and say maybe and no and yes. That gap between those who are negative and positive has closed significantly. And I think we've sort of reached an area where people went from loathing maybe in about 2018 to maybe sort of a modicum of intolerance, if I can use that phrase. But ultimately, things are closing. And I think the positive trend around this is that if you projected where things are going, by the time we get to 2030, we should see a balance of people who are much happier with their HR systems. Now, most people buy their platforms on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So maybe we're in that process of dumping the solutions that we didn't felt work for us, but also the pace of innovation within those systems is going fast as well. But I think despite things closing, it is quite a hard chasm to bridge. And one of the challenges, maybe the first challenge around that, is most HR processes are designed for HR first. So we probably shouldn't be surprised when they don't generate the engagement that we expect from our workers. My perspective is that we need to be much more focused on being employee first. And we need to take that stance around some of our traditional processes if we want to create the people experience that our people want. And I probably could try and throw in a few examples, but I think it's just if you thought about your own experience, even being within HR, of the things that we do to people rather than things that we empower for people, I think there's so many. You could do your own critique. The second point, I think, around this, and maybe this is part of the challenge as we sort of think about why this may be a little bit hard to bridge, is that one of the counter swings I think we see around this is the sort of growing focus on human first and human in the loop. Our ability to have a strong sense, almost a feel for our organization, their energy, their enthusiasms. A lot of the focus around HR systems has been so much on optimizing work, on people processes, rather than really understanding our people, that actually maybe we've underinvested in that culture view, understanding how our culture, how the behaviors of our people, understanding how they feel, how we can maybe create more connected individuals, especially in our sort of remote working environment, and people who feel as though they belong in our organization. I'm not sure if we've quite done enough work there to connect that side of HR with our sense of the organization feel. And I use that feel because I think it's about that emotional intelligence about our organization. So I think those things aren't necessarily transparent, insightful, and delegated enough. And I think that may be something that evolves a lot more as we look out. But I think at the moment, we're probably not solving enough of the employee engagement side still, even though it's quite a strong part of the market. So those are things I pick out probably as the top two. Those are ones probably I'd focus on.
I understand that you're pretty passionate about skills and the importance of skills in the employee life cycle. Where do you stand on skills-based hiring compared to what I'm going to call more traditional hiring based on past experience? What are your thoughts around that?
I think we've got some challenges in being sort of one-dimensional around our view of people. And I'll go back to the thing I said around sort of that sense of, is skills enough? I'm not sure if it necessarily is. It is the hottest topic. It seems to be the way of us navigating work, understanding what skills people have in order to understand what they can do. I think we have to be careful about abstracting skills too much from the work and the aspirations and the roles that we want people to perform. So I think if you want to understand if somebody can do the work you want them to do, you can get them to show you. Okay, so maybe that's going a little bit more down a view of an assessment center, which maybe is a difficult thing to do in a virtual world, but actually, with the advances that we're making around virtual environments, actually, we've got so much more opportunity to understand people's behaviors in addition to their skills and how they problem solve and how they present themselves in a way that just doing a skills assessment, I don't really gives us a view of the whole human. And I'm not sure if it's going to do that for a while.
Okay, very good. David, we are almost out of time already.
Really?
We'll just have to get... I know, right?
Where did that go?
We'll just have to get you back on. But before we wrap up for today, David,
Yeah.
how can our folks connect with and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I think from an organizational point of view, just go to our website, www.fossway.com. Our research is free to download. We have trends around the marketplace. We do profiles of different sectors, be that learning, be that talent acquisition, be that talent people success, talent management, and also cloud HR. If people want to understand what's happening in the marketplace, we make those reports freely available. We also publish our HR realities, TA realities, and digital learning realities surveys in infographics, so you can flick through those and see what inspires you, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to make a new friend, to have a virtual coffee.
Perfect. Well, that just leaves me to say for today, David Perring, you lovely human being, I hope to get to meet you in person very soon. But before we get to that point, thank you very much for being my guest.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.